This is what a metal fabrication website should look like. 146 pages of optimized content targeting the exact keywords and phrases that your potential buyers are searching right now. Here's why you want to have this done correctly. This is 2026 data of one of my clients' RFQ submissions on their website. And this is why you want to have all of this content set up and optimized on your website so you can start having people who are interested in what you do find you and submit a quote so you can bid that job and win that business. I'm going to show you how to go from 0 or 10 to 12 pages that you currently have right now to 146 pages purely optimized for what it is you do: materials, processes, part types, references, locations, industry search, certifications, and how to get that full list, how to build it out, and why you want to have this done on your website to generate the amount of inbound you need to grow your business. My goal for this video for you is, by the end of this video, to have the full list of what buyers in your category actually search. Every page your site should have, what belongs on every page from a content perspective, the order to build them in, and exactly what changes so AI engines name you instead of your competitors. Everything I'm about to build, the full keyword list, the 146 page map, the detailed content prompt, and all the tools I use will be linked in the description. Grab it now. You can follow along with every step as you're watching this entire video. When this is done correctly, this gets you found by buyers searching for a part, material, or process who have never heard of you. And that's the key. The key with doing SEO and AI optimization the right way is you want to be found when somebody is searching for a solution and they don't know you exist. This is not a case to improve your brand search. This is not a case to improve where you show up when somebody already knows about your company. This is for people who do not know you exist, but have a problem, and you can provide that solution, and you should be showing up for those keywords and phrases. There's 3 main parts and then a bonus at the end. The first is the foundation. What needs to be set up on your website from an SEO perspective to make sure you rank well? Next is the structure, how to do this. Third is AI optimization. And then fourth is what comes after. Before you do any additional research, what really helps with this process is understanding a few data points so that your website can be set up to be optimized for your business. And what I mean by that is understanding which processes you actually run in-house, which materials you stock or source, which part forms you make, which certifications you hold, your tolerance capability and the specs you can quote to, how you typically sell, is it per project quotes, production volumes, or both, which service areas you actually cover, and then any unusual capability worth its own page. The reason why it helps to understand all of this information before doing the optimization process is it makes no sense to have content on your website that you do not want to actually quote jobs from. And it makes no sense to talk about certifications you don't have. You want to make it so that it's very clear to humans, who are the ones who are making these quoting decisions, what it is you do and how you can help them. The content and the pages that we're going to set up and optimize are going to be related specifically to your business. So if you sell custom metal parts made to a drawing and you get paid on quote jobs and you build the parts and then ship them, and your buyer is looking for a manufacturer that can make their part, that's different than somebody who has material in stock and supplies the parts and they're looking to place an order on like an e-commerce website, for example. So the key is just to understand some of these foundational points prior to optimizing the website, so it becomes very clear how to set up the content and how to optimize it. Now, a couple things that I've already ruled out here as I was doing this initial research is steel manufacturing, unless that is a service you provide. Obviously, that would be a different discussion here. But for the cases here, I'm doing this video based on metal fabrication. So a metal fabrication company does not generally manufacture steel. Secondly, there are over 1,000 searches here excluded. I'll get to that in a second here, but essentially what that means is we do not care to rank for something like carbon steel pan or ceramic coated stainless steel pan or whatever. The point is we want to make sure that we're optimizing for keywords and phrases that actually make sense. So what I've done here is I've gone through, and I'll share this with you. I've gone through and pulled 2,806 different keywords that cover different processes, materials, and parts the buyer might look for before deciding which actually makes sense. Now, the other thing is I've used multiple sources to generate this data. And you, as a business owner or a marketer or metal fabricator, the point is you probably have a lot of this data already just in your mind because you've been doing this business for so long. I had to use some additional tools here. And what I've done before actually is come up with some additional ideas and keywords to build content on the website as well. So this process here, I generated 2007 different keywords from a keyword tool. 431 were processes and materials combined. Related searches 305, and I'll show you some tips and strategies for looking at those as well. AI generated questions 73, and then buyer questions 40. And I'll show you the screening, the list, and how we can filter these as well. One other item here to mention, the keyword tools a lot of times will return things like scrap metal or carbon steel pan, like I mentioned, or Bessemer steel. Now, for example, scrap metal, people see this as a search volume of 49,500 searches per month and think this is a good keyword to rank for because you can work with scrap metal, or you've had a customer in the past who is looking for scrap metal. Problem is, this key phrase itself is so broad and very competitive that it's not likely to turn into any customers for you, even if you do rank well. So my recommendation always is to figure out what keywords and phrases your ideal customers are actually searching for and make sure your site is set up for those specifically. And like I just said, the key is to decide which searches are worth going after and which ones are not. So we need to sort this entire keyword list into keep, maybe, or drop, and write down why. And can you actually quote what somebody wants for this specific product or this key phrase? If you don't filter your keyword list and decide what you need to leave out, you end up chasing traffic that never actually buys from you. And that is a huge problem here. So the list here, and I'll get to the actual list in a second, but I just want to explain the strategy and the foundation with you so it makes sense why it's set up this way instead of just explaining the keyword list for you. The keep, maybe, drop split. The way I did this is there are 918 keyword targets that I'm recommending to keep, 548 maybes, and some of these depend on your business itself, and then 1,006 drop. And here are some of the high volume searches that were dropped and why. Stainless steel as a high volume search. This is too general, not fabrication buyer intent. 90,500 searches per month. As a note though, if you fabricate stainless steel, you should absolutely have a page about that. But a broad key phrase optimized for stainless steel by itself is something I see all too often. You have the material or the finish or whatever as a primary page on your website optimized for that general key phrase. And there's no point in having that optimized on your website. The key is to have the page optimized specifically for that offering and to talk more about your stainless steel fabrication methods. Again, scrap metal, 49,500, scrap that one. Bessemer steel, 40,500. Carbon steel pan, 40,500. Max steel, cold steel. Again, cold steel, if this is a term or a product or a material or whatever that you offer, talk more about that in specificity, not in a general key phrase term. Decide which searches get their own page and which ones get grouped together. This is another massive key here, and a huge point of failure I see on many websites is building pages for the sake of building pages. When this is done incorrectly, what happens is you build a page for every phrase and they all compete with each other instead of ranking together. What you want to do is come up with and decide a cluster or a grouping of topics that the page should be optimized for. And as an example here, you can optimize a single page like custom metal fabrication for a number of different phrases like custom metal fabrication custom, custom metal fabricators, custom fabrication metal, custom metal and fabrication, and metal custom fabrication. You get the point. There are dozens of other keywords this page will likely rank for when it's optimized correctly and when it's optimized well. And you want to not have a page for every single one of these. You want to have a primary page optimized for that parent term or that head term or that cluster term, whatever you want to call it, pillar term, and have content on that page optimized for and targeting any related keyword or phrase. This is paramount for the strategy to make sure that your site is set up and structured correctly so that it can be found for these keywords that actually drive business for you, because that's the whole point. And then again, from a location perspective, if you have branches in Houston and Austin and San Diego, San Antonio, whatever, pick a city, pick a suburb. The point is you would have different pages for each of these, especially if your offerings are different in those different locations. So if your location in Houston and Austin provide different services, that would certainly make sense to have a different page for each of those. Additionally, if you're looking to target locally, it makes sense to have local pages that are targeted and optimized for those individual cities. There are lots of things you can do from a local optimization perspective to target people searching in a geolocation or a geo area. Number 5, set up the site structure before building any pages. And the reason for this is you want to decide the URL structure and make sure all pages are built from overlapping material and process combinations. And the reason why this is important is because you want to decide the URL structure before building 146 pages or 200 or 500 or however many pages you're building, because you want to make sure that when these pages are potentially built from overlapping material or process combinations, they don't compete with each other or hide or cannibalize in the search engines. And the reason why is if a search engine can't read the page, it doesn't matter how good the page is. It will be very difficult for you to rank, and in some cases, impossible for you to rank. And that is not what you want to have happen. So if you have a developer working with you on this, this part of the process is where you would involve your developer to make sure they can structure the website correctly for you from this perspective. You can probably find and determine the content and the keywords and all of that needs to be set up for you. But the key here is this is critical for how your website is structured. And this is one of the reasons why I spent some time going through the foundation of how your website should be set up, because if this is not done correctly, it doesn't matter how much content you have on your website. It's going to be incredibly difficult for you to rank anyway. And the point of setting up your website correctly is so you can rank for the keywords that make sense and generate business for keywords and phrases that your buyers are actually searching. Now, one technical note I want to share with you, and this is incredibly important as well, is, let me zoom this in so you can read it better. I'll just read this to you. Material and process pages overlap, word order variants of the same phrase. So a 146-page map carries real duplication risk or duplicate risk. Self-canonical every page in 301 the collapsed variants into their survivor. This is the single biggest duplicate risk in the map, and the one part of this step a fabricator would not already know, unless you've done technical SEO work on your website in the past. A self-canonical, this is just code that you would set up on a page specifically to tell search engines that this page is the primary page for this keyword or phrase. And then a 301 is a redirect. So you'd want to make sure all of these are in place if you are changing around the structure, changing around content on your website so that this work actually makes sense and actually produces results for you. In this part of the video, what I'm going through is the structure. So how you would actually set up your website now. We've gone through the foundation, why it's important, why it needs to be done that way. And that was the research phase. Now is what we're actually going to build and talk about the structure a little bit more. So what you want to do is organize every page into processes, materials, parts, and industries. And what I've done is group these into 7 main categories. And if this doesn't make sense for you or you have other pages, that's totally fine. In most cases, most times the recommendations of the number of pages I have for clients gets reduced because they don't care to have as much content about this. But in general, when it's done this way, it produces great results because people can find you for every keyword or phrase and every product offering, process, material you offer. And that's the point. And the reason why we spend so much time on this is after initial research, we went back and found additional pages to add to this as well. And over time, you'll probably find more pages to add to the content map too. But here is the final list I have that would make sense for most fabricators. And the reason is, again, we want to cover everything in as much detail as possible. Materials, processes, part types, references, locations, industry served, and certifications. And you can look through all of these. So again, we would have stainless steel sheet metal, 304 stainless steel, welding stainless steel, and so on. And again, some of these may make sense to be talked about or discussed on other pages. And that is likely to happen when you have a site with this much content. And that's fine. We can hone this in a little bit more and more specifically. But in general, this gives you a great idea of how to set this up, how to structure this, and what your site should look like from a content perspective. And the other thing you can do is from a materials perspective, instead of building it out like this, stainless steel sheet metal, the reason this is organized this way as well is I've organized this by search volume. So you can see here, of all the materials that are searched, you have 304,480 searches per month. And this is US search volume. So again, if you only work with companies in your area or customers in the Southwest or in the South or whatever, again, these numbers would change based on that. But in general, many of the companies I talk to serve most of the United States and can provide those customers those services. So what you would do is, again, look through and figure out every single one of these pages that make sense: aluminum, sheet metal, copper, cold steel, D2, and so on. And if you don't provide copper or something, then you would just skip this page. So the 146 page total then becomes 145 or 130 or whatever. And then processes is another big one: laser cutting, fabrication welding, CNC machining, metal stamping, welding, soldering, and so on. part types, panels, sheet metal brackets, custom enclosures, metal, sheet metal bender, and so on. References, sheet metal contractor, metal gauge thickness. So the sheet metal contractor, this would be if you wanted to be found and provide those specific services. Again, any of these pages that don't make sense for your business, just skip them. You don't need to add them in. Metal gauge thickness, this would be a reference sheet or a reference page that talks about that specifically. And these searches are great for ranking in engines. Again, this itself would be if you had locations all throughout the country. These are the largest search volumes that I was able to find. But what I have seen is even if a search has 0 searches or 0 search volume shown, it can absolutely be beneficial to rank for if it makes sense and if it is something that you serve as a business. What I mean by that is if you're in a small city or suburb, it can still make sense to have that page there because for a couple reasons. Number one, if somebody does a near me search and they're in your area and you have that page optimized for that specific area, it helps you show up there. And number two, even if there is no search volume shown, I've seen cases where that page itself has produced dozens or hundreds of actual visitors to that page. So if it makes sense from a business perspective, always create that piece of content and create that page on your website. Next here is industries served. So this would be automotive, aerospace, construction, architectural. And again, there are very likely more industries. So this list here could expand beyond that. But what I would do here is figure out where your best customers are. Are they in aerospace? And then drill down even further. Is it rocket fabrication or rocket parts or aerospace, brakes, whatever? Again, you know your industry and you know your customers better than I do. So this would be something that in general, when I work with a client on this process, we go through and talk about this in a little bit more detail. And then I do keyword research. You have customer research. And with that, with our powers combined, we can create a very detailed list of content topics that should be set up for you that can help you rank and get better traffic, better qualified traffic, and more customers. And then certifications here, if you have any AS9100 and so on, you can add any of these onto a page or have individual pages for them as well, especially if it's something that is relevant for customers who would be looking for what you do. So what does this actually look like here? This is the full export here of these hundreds and hundreds of different keywords here. And like I said, you can do this process yourself and work through the entire list here and filter through why a keyword would be something you'd want to drop, why it's a maybe, and or why it would be a keyword you'd want to keep on the website as well. But this process here, you can export this and go through here. I'll just go through a few examples here with you. Michael's custom framing, this would certainly be a drop. Smith machine, that's an exercise machine. We don't need that one. Steel, it's too broad. We don't need that. You can talk about steel on the website for sure. Roofing companies, of course, at the drop. And then machine shop, pretty general. So this would be a maybe, I would say. But if it is something that you wanted to optimize for, maybe the homepage or something, then talk about that and how you're a CNC machine shop or whatever. But in general, that would be the process of going through here to figure out which keywords you want to keep, which ones you'd want to remove. And then if you had notes in here as well. But you can see here, this list is, like I mentioned to you, almost 2,700 keywords. And this gives us an idea as to what would make sense for you to show up for and rank for, and how to build and optimize the website for the keywords that would actually drive business for you. Next thing is going through and figuring out what every process page must answer. So you want to find the questions buyers actually ask, give every similar page the same sections in the same order, tolerances, materials, file formats, lead time. At the length the cited pages run, about 1,271 words across 10 sections. What I mean by that is this is going into a little bit more of the specifics of what this looks like from a content perspective, and I will share that with you in a second here. But the key is, this is the process you would do on every single page on your website. So a couple ways to figure out the content that should go on every page. One is the questions buyers actually ask, grouped by theme. And the reason why this is important is because if people are talking about and wondering about processing capabilities, cost, material, industries, and so on, you want to have that content on your page. And one way to do this would be, as an example, if we look at a search for laser cutting surface, and I scroll down here, there's this people also ask section. The reason why this is so critical here is this gives you exact information about what people are already typing. Now you can see here, there's 4 listed, but to get more, you can click on this arrow and then you click it again. And now you can see we had 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Now we have 6. And you can do it again. Click the same one and more keep showing up. You can click on different ones and more keep showing up. So then this gives you a huge list of what people are actually typing and searching. And this is a very nice trick to build content on your website or on any given page about that specific topic that you know people are already questioning and wondering about. Second would be a tool like Neuron Writer. And I've shared videos on this before, but the reason why this tool is so important and helpful is it has a number of different data points here. One is we can put a keyword in here. So again, I've put laser cutting service in here. And what this does then is tells us how well optimized our site is relative to our competitors. So we can look at a couple different things there. The second is it tells us in general how many words of content our page should have. So you can see here, this page should have 1,217 words of content. And this tool also looks at the different terms that we should have on, let me hide my video here. This looks at the different terms our page should have. Laser cutting service, laser cut, laser, custom laser cut, and so on. And then it also gives us an idea as to the headings we should have. So H1s, H2s, H3s. And if this is sounding like foreign language to you, that's not the point of here. That's not the purpose of this video. The purpose of this video is to try to make it easy for you to understand what to do and how to do this. So in H2, if we look here at how this is set up, and H2 is going to be a heading on the website. And then you would have content, and then you would have laser cutting tolerances, something like this. And then these would be subheadings. So H2, content, H3. H1 is usually going to be the title of the page itself. And then you'd have more content. The reason why you would set up a page of content this way is it makes it easy for a search engine to understand the primary topic on the page, content on the page, and then subtopics. And in general, you would set this up as a hierarchy. And what I mean by that is you would have H2 and then potentially content under it, and then H3, content under that, and then you would have another H3, and then you would go back to an H2. In general, you do not want to skip these. You can go from an H2 to an H3, but I would not recommend going H2 to an H4, H3. And again, if this sounds like algebra, that's not the point. The point is just setting up content and structuring it correctly so a search engine can see and understand and read your content, and it makes it easier for you to show up and generate more traffic and more business. That's the point. Now, all that being said, I want to walk you through the entire process for creating a piece of content on one of these pages. And in general, there are 3 main ways you could do this. First is build an outline and create the content yourself. The second is to use AI to create an outline and then create the content yourself. And the third would be to create an outline either with AI or yourself and then have AI write the content. So the example I'm going to be using here is for a service page for laser cutting service. So what I will do is, like I was showing you in Neuron Writer, we will use this to see if we can get our content score to be somewhere in the top tier here compared to where the competitors are currently ranking for this term. So the example I'm going to show you is using this fully detailed prompt here that I'll use this into Claude. And what we'll do then is get the piece of content from this, add it into Neuron Writer to check how it is. So like I said, what you could do is a number of different things. You could use AI to create the outline yourself and or use a keyword tool to help with that process. So what I would do to start, if you have no idea what to do, is to go to somewhere like Claude or ChatGPT and ask it to create a topical outline for a piece of content on a service page for laser cutting service. Now, for some of the content on this page, what you could do is use that people also ask segment or trick I showed you earlier and get information you can use for finding questions people are asking specifically related to laser cutting service. And this is great content to put in the FAQ section on that page that can help you rank for those questions that people are asking, but also help you rank in language models as well. So the prompt here, like I mentioned, what I will do is I will take this full prompt and I will start to populate it with data from Neuron Writer. So what we have to do here, and in this case, I'm just keeping it blank. You would use your company name here, obviously, but I'll have it blank and it'll just come up with a fake company name for us. So I want you to create exceptional content from a metal fabrication company site that feels 100% human written. And the one other note here, if you are concerned about the AI creating footprints in your content, that's fine. Do not use this to create content. Then just use AI or tools to create an outline and manually publish the content. You can absolutely do that, and it works extremely well to rank also. Audience and voice, right for engineers, purchasing managers, OEM buyers, and so on. And again, you can change any of this and put it to whoever your target buyer would be. Specificity, focus on this task. Create a word count word article. So if we go back here to Neuron Writer and we look at how much content we needed to have, it recommends 1,217. So if we go back here, we will do this as 1217, titled, and we will just title this laser cutting services. Blend in these keywords naturally along with related LSI, so latent semantic indexing, just means synonyms. Synonyms are adjacent processes, material intolerance language to deepen topical coverage. And then the keywords will go here. So if we go back to Neuron Writer, we go to term coverage, and we want article. What we want to do is copy all of these here. So we want to copy list of terms and suggested uses. What this will do in the prompt here is add in all of the terms. You can see here it recommends that we have laser cutting service in that content 1 to 3 times. Laser cut 9 to 24, and so on. Go back to Neuron Writer here, and we want to also add the extended list. So we'll copy this with suggested uses, add this to the bottom of this list, and then where it fits, reference real specifics, materials. Again, you would, if you do not offer MIG or TIG welding or spot welding or whatever, remove all of that. If you don't have any standards or certifications that you want to put onto this page, remove those also. Don't put information in here just for the sake of having it. Make sure it's relevant for your business. Structure and flow. Divide the article into sections with headings inspired by these recommendations. Only if they're relevant. Use question-based headings where possible to target featured snippets and AI overviews. H2, H3 recommendations. So we go back to Neuron Writer. We go up to headings. And H1 would be for the main part of, or the main title of the page. So we don't need to add those. We'll grab H2s, H3s, and I will copy all of them. Go back here, paste those in there. And now we have all the H2s, H3s, company name. I added at the bottom here to just use a fake company name. I'll go through the rest of this prompt here. So language, we do not want fancy or clunky words. We want to make it very easy for people to understand. We want it to be accurate, so logic, and avoid making up details. And then we also want to focus on reader value first, making it read like a seasoned fabricator's advice, not just a keyword pile up or a bunch of AI content. FAQ section, we want to have a detailed FAQ section at the end. And then here's the structured data markup to use as well. And then after writing, review it to ensure it feels human. And like I mentioned before, if company name is not filled in, just use a made up company name. Now, here's one other piece of very helpful, useful information for you. When you are creating content on your website, building internal links to other pages on your website is going to help search engines understand how these pages are related to each other, and it's going to help you rank. Building internal links to pages on your site can improve rankings without doing anything else. So what you would want to do is to get a list of those URLs. So in this example here, if we just have, we'll call it latfabrication.com, and this page itself talks about your laser cutting services, and you also talk about plasma cutting and water jet cutting, and that's it, let's say. So what you would do in that case, if you already have these pages, then you would link to these pages in here. So it would be latfabrication.com/ and depending on your URL structure that you organized before, you would link to these pages here. So then you would do the same thing here. Boom, water jet cutting. And what you would want to do is to keep this list in here and have this this prompt that says, additionally, if relevant, link to any of these internal pages using strategic contextual optimized anchor text based on the topic of the page. So what does this mean? This sounds fancy. Strategic contextual optimized anchor text. Anchor text is the blue, usually blue text when you have a link on a page. You would want to be sure that within the content on your site, you're using contextual, so it's relevant, within that piece of content to link to this other page. So on your laser cutting page, for example, if you talk about the differences between laser cutting and plasma cutting, you could say something like that. I'll show you when the content's created because it should do this for us. And what we'll see then is we'll have a link to plasma cutting and water jet cutting within that piece of content. But if this is your site, it would link to those pages on your site, which helps rank and makes it easier for people to find additional information and additional services you have. So I will take this entire prompt now, and I will copy this into Claude, and I will run this. And what this will give us then is a piece of content output that we can copy directly into Neuron Writer. And when that's done, we can check the score to see how well it's optimized. Then from there, we could make additional edits. You can manually edit this further. You can take that piece of content and run it and see how it actually ranks and if it gets indexed. If it does, great, and you can continue to optimize it. If not, you can obviously make manual edits to improve that content and make it so that it makes more sense. And then always, I would recommend manual editing regardless, and then also adding in any call to action items or other relevant pieces of information that can help your prospective buyers understand and learn more about you so that you're not just filling your site with a bunch of AI slop content. Okay, so as that's running here, here's just a couple more notes for you as you're thinking about this. What you would do also is fill in any of this additional information. So if you have tolerances and dimensional capabilities, certifications you have, equipment list or material range, lead times and minimum order quantities, and then service area and shipping reach, you can add all of that to the page as well and add additional content that is specific for your website that would be different for you compared to any of your competitors. Looks like the content here is still loading within Claude. So I'll finish this up here with you on this part, and then we'll look at the content. So I already went through this. Building in the target terms is what you want to do on each piece of content. And the key to remember here on this content is this is what you would do on every single page to make sure it's set up and has enough content about the topics and the keywords and phrases that you want to rank for. The other thing, like I mentioned, is making sure that you build the structured data. And I'll go through this briefly in more detail here because this is important for a number of areas on your website. One specifically would be within local business. So if you are attempting to rank locally and target customers in your area, when you target customers in your local area, you have a specific address that's shown and that's listed. This address can help you be found for near me searches, regardless of where somebody's searching. What I mean by that is if somebody's in your area and they type a near me search, their IP address can be tracked to determine where they're actually searching. And if you have a page that's optimized for that area or that location, it can make it easier for you to show up in those locations as well. So this is something that would be critical for that. Additionally, building this structured data on your website makes it easier for search engines just to understand who you are and what you do. And it's almost always a good process to have within the content, within the code of your website. Now that it's done, it said here that it used Lat Fabrication as the company name, which is fine. So what I will do is copy this, add it to Neuron Writer here, and paste it in, and add it in. Let me delete that. That added as an H2. So let's go to here, paste this in, and adding in the script here as well. We'll just delete that code here because it's not relevant for the tool. It's just repeating the content here, but it's marked up with structured data. So we will remove that out of here. And this is what I was mentioning to you a couple minutes ago, is the links here. So you can see here, this link goes to latfabrication.com/plasma cutting, and then water jet cutting, same thing. So this is helping the SEO value of the plasma cutting page and the water jet cutting page because it is providing a contextual anchor text link to that page on our website. So then if we go back here a little bit, laser cutting services. You can now see the score of the content, and this is not an official ranking score by any means, but it does look at what the competing websites have from a keyword perspective and a content length perspective. And it gives us an idea as to how well the page is optimized based on the websites that are ranking. So this gives us a really good score and really good idea as to how thorough the content is at being put together for what we want to rank for. Then what you would do, obviously, is publish this on your website and then submit it to Google Search Console for indexing. So this page can be picked up and found in search. And as a last note here, here's a quick checklist for you to understand when a page is done and when you can move on to the next one. So the page here, like I said, laser cutting services, this would be one of the 146 pages to work on. And this process you would go through for each one of those pages. So the page is done when it answers the buyer's question in the first 60 words before anything else. Now a services page is a little bit different than that, but in general, you want to talk about the service right away. If you go back here, laser cutting services, short answer up front, laser cutting uses a focused laser beam to precise blah, blah, blah. So it talks about the service right away. And again, if you don't like how AI creates content, the point of this isn't to say that this is the best content and this is how it should be set up. The point is to optimize this content for the keywords you want to rank for. If it doesn't make sense and you don't want to say this, then delete that. And instead, just start it like this, laser cutting, blah, blah, blah. Next part, does it cover all 25 related searches, each in its own H2 section? Again, this is dependent upon the keyword itself and how many you would have. Does it have a real numeric spec or tolerance table, an HTML table, not an image of one? If relevant for that piece of content, build a table that has a spec table or a tolerance table and make it so that it's very easy for search to understand this is a table, because that can help you rank in language models as well, which I'll talk about more in section 3 for the AI optimization of your site as well. Does it carry valid service schema plus FAQ page where the page answers questions? That was the code that I chopped out. So if we go back to the bottom here, all this code here at the bottom, this is the part that you should have on each page. It's called structured data or markup language schema data. And what this can do, like I said, is help you rank for those different terms you want to rank for, make it very easy for search to determine what this page is about. Does it run about 1,271 words? So depending on what the term actually is, the expected length will change based on that. So whatever it is there, be in that general ballpark most times. However, if you're writing the content yourself, and if you notice the piece of content is only 400 to 500 words, but you completely cover the topic as well as you possibly could, and you're an expert on laser cutting or whatever it is, and the adding additional content for content's sake would just fluff up the word count for no reason, then that's fine. Publish that content and it can absolutely rank without being in the expected range of the top ranking pages. A lot of times the average is skewed because there is a piece of content or a page that's ranking that has 3,000 words or something. And then you have the majority of them really are 400 or 500 words of content. So take any of the length metrics here as kind of a ballpark figure or a good recommendation. But if you can produce the content in less words, that's totally fine. And then lastly, title, H1, meta, internal links, and image alt filled from real facts, not placeholders. And the key here, as I mentioned to you, the title is right here. And on your website, you'll have a section to add the title for the page. In general, when you optimize the title itself, you would have more than just laser cutting service. You can see here some of these, like Send Cut Send, they have online sheet cutting services and then their brand name. And then Exometry has custom online laser cutting services. And then Pinocchio has metal and plastic laser cutting, can't see it, has metal and plastic laser cutting, get online quote in seconds. So you would want to ensure your title is optimized, and you can use this tool here also to do that. Laser cutting service, and then you could do something like custom laser cutting, and then we would do lat fabrication, something like that potentially. And if you don't like these pipe separators and you like hyphens instead, again, that's not the point here. Description, we could just generate one and see what it comes up with, and then you can modify it as you need to. Get high quality laser cut parts with our precision laser cutting service. We cut and engrave diverse sheet metal materials like plastic with our advanced CNC laser. Again, if it's relevant for you, keep it. If not, don't do class because you don't want that in there, remove it out. But this is what you would want to do to make sure each page is optimized correctly for the keywords and phrases you want to rank for. And then lastly, you would want to build pages in the right order. What I mean by that is as you're going through the structure for building your website out and building all the content, build it in a way where you can work on the internal links, like I mentioned. So as you are building this content piece out, you want to be able to include as many internal links as you can, so you don't have to go back and continuously update and add a piece of content with new internal links as you're creating those pieces of content. So as a quick recommendation for this style and structure of site, you could build the laser cutting service page, and then you can have the copper laser cutting, and then laser cutting frames, fabrication welding, and then titanium, shielded metal arc welding, and so on. You can pause this and look through all these topics. I'm not going to read through this entire page here for you, but that just gives you an idea as to what order to build the pages in. And the other thing you could do when you're structuring your website and optimizing your website is build from the most important services you offer to least, and make sure the section is completely optimized for the primary services or your highest value services first, and then you can go to the other ones. So far, we've gone through the foundation for how to get your website set up and structured, the structure for how to get your website optimized, get your content figured out, get your content optimized. And what you have so far essentially is a page map of what pages need to be set up and optimized, how to optimize them, and the build order. What you would need to do is write and publish those 146 pages. And if you're doing about 5 or 10 pages a week, it's going to take you 4 to 7 months to do that. You could certainly work faster than that, but if you don't have any content right now, then maybe you just need to know what content to produce, and you can start doing that. And the biggest thing is building this content and making sure it's optimized correctly so that it can be indexed, and then checking that it's indexed. And if it doesn't get indexed in Google or in search, to optimize and update those pages so that it can be retested and re-indexed for you. Next part to go through is the AI optimization part of your website and what needs to be done to help your website show up and rank, especially in language models, but also in search. Just because there's a massive opportunity in AI for you to rank right now does not mean you should not also focus on traditional search, like organic Google search. So what we want to do now is figure out who the AI engines actually recommend, and figure out what needs to be done to get your website shown in those spots. So the important thing to understand here is that of the pages I reviewed, I'll get into more detail on this in a second, 9 of the 18 pages AI sites are not a fabricator's own service page. These are buyer's guides, roundups, and directory listings. And you, on your own website, you're not going to outrank a top 30 list with your services page. That's just not how AI is set to structure and read that data. You get on the list or you publish your own. And that is where some of these additional insights come in, and recommendations for how to build and structure your website. And in section 4 here, as I mentioned to you before, how to get found in these top 30 lists or these top 10 lists or whatever. So of the searches we looked at, like I said, 9 of the 18 cited are not a fabricator's own service page. You can see the list of pages here. There are buyer's guides. There are some service pages that show up, roundups, service pages, buyer's guide, and so on. But in general, about half of them are not individual service pages for fabricator websites. Here's what I found. Every one of the 9 service pages AI sites answers the question in the first 60 words. And that's why I recommend that when you're building content, to make sure you're answering any question you're talking about within that content in the first 60 words of that content. And here's a little bit more detail about this. What the cited pages have in common, all 18, are the 9 that are service pages. So 14 out of 18 have answers in the first 60 words, and 9 out of 9 service pages do that as well. Show numeric specs. 8 out of 9 service pages have numeric specs on them. 15 out of 18 have them. 3 out of 9 service pages have a table. In some cases, a services page doesn't make sense to have a table, but some of the other pieces of content, the roundups or whatever, do. And then median length, 1,271 words with 10 H2 sections. So that kind of goes along with what we found on Neuron Writer as well. So my recommendation for you is to build the spec table anyway. Tables are common in guides and roundups, less so in service pages. Do it not because everyone does, but because it makes your numbers extractable in language models. So if you take one thing away from this video, is when you're building your content, make it as easy as possible for a language model or a search engine to understand who you are and what you do. And if it means building a spec table that makes sense on that piece of content, then do that so you improve your chances of being found in ChatGPT. Now, I also mentioned adding structured data or schema data within your content as an important factor. Interestingly enough, the service schema was only found on 1 of 9 pages. So what this means is, and what my finding and my recommendation is, schema is cheap insurance. It's not a proven lever for getting you to be found in language models necessarily. Only 1 of the 9 service pages used service schema, and most cited pages skip it. So clearly it's not required to be found. My recommendation would be to add it because it removes any ambiguity about what the page is in a few hours of work, and 8 of 9 competitors have not bothered. A competitive gap, not a ranking lever. The other benefit here is this can make it easier for you to rank in organic search, not just AI language models. So my recommendation always when optimizing a website is to make it as easy as possible for any algorithm to understand your content and who you are. And if structured data helps that, then I recommend doing it. And some people recommend blocking AI robots from reading your content and reading your website. I do not recommend doing that because it makes it more difficult for you to be shown in language models then. So access is not the problem here. What you would want to do is make sure that you have your robots.txt file set up and optimized correctly, and also an LLMs.txt file as well. And those files themselves provide information to search engines and to language models about the types of content that you want it to read and index, and also anything that you do not want it to read and index. So as a quick note, what you want to do is verify your site allows at least these 10 AI agents. So GPT bot, OAI search bot, ChatGPT user, Claude bot, Claude search bot, Perplexity bot, Perplexity bot, Google extended, CC bot, Byte spider, and Appabot extended. And if any of these are blocked, then it's going to be extremely difficult for you to even get found at all in these language models or within any of these AI. One last thing here to think about as you are building content and optimizing your site, especially for AI. I'll read this to you here because this is important. AI builds its answer from pieces it can lift off the page. So a page that buries the answer can rank and still get passed over. What that means is you want to make sure that your content, like I mentioned, is answer first content. Makes it very easy for any algorithm to understand what this piece of content is. And the other thing to do is to build what's called fan out queries or fan out content. The goal here is to determine what people are actually searching, so you can build that content accordingly and have a better chance to show up when people are searching in AI. Now that we've gone through the foundation, the structure of how to set up your website, how to build your content, what content you need to build, in what order to build your content, and how to optimize your content for AI, the only part is why. Why do all of this? And you want more business. But the big key here is to see and understand what this would actually be worth for you in new business. And to do that, we can estimate what this would actually be worth in terms of new RFQs for you based on search volume and some expected ranges here. So what I've put together here is a projected sessions, and a session is somebody visiting your website, and RFQs, 3 scenarios. The base would be 2,000 sessions. If you have 146 new pages of content and each one gets 2 visitors in that 6-month period, you're looking at, 2 per month by month 6, you're looking at 2 RFQs. If each one of those pages gets about 10 visitors, 10, 15 visitors, you're looking at 16 RFQs per month. And aggressively, if you're getting about 10,000 sessions, so 9,823, you're looking at 76 RFQs per month. By month 12, 577 sessions, 4 RFQs, and so on. I'm not going to read through each of these, but the numbers start to get pretty exciting when you look at what this could be in terms of new traffic and new RFQs by month 12. If you have about 4,000 sessions and you're getting 30 new RFQs each month, or 18,000 sessions and you're getting 142 new RFQs each month, that could be significant for you from a new business perspective. Now, if we look at projected revenue, and this is obviously, your numbers, what an initial order, a sample order size would be, or the average customer size. But in general, if we look at what the potential first order revenue would be by month 24, once you have all of your website set up and optimized correctly, and you're getting traffic and you're ranking for these keywords, you have all your content ready, conservatively, you could be doing 19 to 65,000 per month in new first-time revenue. Base, again, if this is done correctly, $132,000 to $440,000 in new revenue every month. And then aggressively, $626,000 to about $2 million per month in new revenue for you. And again, 24-month program value, you can just extrapolate those numbers, of course, and multiply it out. But these numbers here is why I strongly recommend building your website and structuring it in a way to be found for the keywords that actually make sense and actually drive new business for you. Now, as a bonus, I want to share with you what else you can do after your initial build, after you have all your content set up, after your website's optimized, after you're starting to show up in AI a little bit. What can be done to really pour fuel on the fire here and help you rank better for the keywords you want to rank for, and help you get more traffic and more targeted, high-value RFQs to your website. So what you need to do is work to get other websites to link to you. And there are a number of different ways you can do this. One would be to publish reference material worth pointing to, tolerance tables, spec sheets, cost benchmarks, and get industry sites and directories to link to it. So this would be kind of like those top 30 pages that I mentioned to you, or the best stainless steel fabricators in New York, or whatever. Again, you would want to make it so that your content is useful and relevant for a potential linker to link to you. No one links to a page that has nothing on it worth pointing to. That's key. There are a number of strategies you could do to reach out to these companies as well, or to these websites to get your link on those websites as well. Here's just a quick list of linkable assets you could build. Like I said, tolerance and material reference tables, spec and gauge charts, DFM checklists, cost and weight calculators. What's not really earning links right now would be homepage link requests, generic service page outreach, or directory-only link profile sites. And the reason why is most websites do not want to link to other websites unless those other websites are valuable. Or if we look at this differently, if your website is spammed and filled with junk content and junk links, most people do not want to link to that. Just like you wouldn't want to get a link from a website that is filled with spam as well. This tip here kind of goes along with what I mentioned with the structured data. Getting listed where AI already looks is a very easy strategy to look at. So what you would want to do is figure out what companies are getting listed and where those companies are listed. What I mean by that is figure out what searches are being done that is showing a company like Xometry, for example. And I realize they're very likely not a direct competitor of yours, but from a search and a traffic perspective, they absolutely are, because they rank for so many different keywords. So what you would want to do is figure out the other sites on the internet that are linking to and talking about Xometry, and see if there's any of those you can get listed on as well. And a number of quick wins for you would be unclaimed directory listings, name, address, phone, inconsistent across sites. This is very important for local rankings, NAP, name, address, phone. So any directory site you can get locally listed, make sure that your business name, your address, and your phone number is consistent, the exact same across all of those entries. And then no links tying the fabricators' profiles together. You want to make sure and make it easy for any search algorithm to understand that this is your website, this is your LinkedIn, this is your Instagram, this is your Facebook page, any of those types of things. Link them all together as much as you possibly can and make it easy for anywhere on the internet to associate all of your brand profiles with you. Another bonus tip for you, making sure that you update your content over time. So what you want to do is, if something has changed, there's a new spec or a new material, or you've changed the way you do business with something, update that page and let search engines know this page has been updated as well. The reason is pages that never get updated slowly fall behind the ones that do. That is a ranking factor. Relevancy can help you show up better in search. Another tip for you, I see this sometimes where companies want to just add more and more pages to their website, but I'm recommending to not do that until the ones you have are already starting to rank and get traffic. The reason is search engines have what's called a crawl budget. There's only so many pages on your website that get crawled at any time. And this depends on how well known your site is, how large it is, and how much authority your site has. If you do not have a lot of that yet, then adding dozens or hundreds of new pages immediately and not over time is something that can actually hurt you and make it more difficult for you to rank. So make sure your content is starting to get indexed and generate traffic before you start adding a bunch of new pieces of content as well. And then secondly, with this, if you're adding new content, you don't want to have 30 pages talking about your stainless steel fabrication process. You want to have one page primarily talking about that. And if there is a unique topic that still references stainless steel fabrication or something, then you can talk about it. But you do not want to have many multiple pages on your website that are specifically optimized for the same keyword or phrase. Lastly, how do you know if this is actually working? What you want to do is, first of all, be sure to give this time, because it takes time to build the content. It takes time for the content to get indexed and show up. And it takes time for you to start optimizing the content continuously. So what you would want to do is make sure that in the first 90 days, your content is getting indexed, you're starting to see some impressions, and you're starting to see some new page coverage. So you're starting to rank for some of these new keywords. After that, you'll start to rank better for these terms. You'll start to get sessions or people coming to the website. You'll get RFQs and AI citations. And these may happen in different orders here, of course. But in general, you want to make sure that the pages are getting indexed, because if they're not indexed, you can't rank. So make sure that happens first. Then you'll start getting impressions, and then you'll start ranking for keywords. Now, in general, I say it's a mistake here to check rankings in week 3, but I like to check rankings in day 1 to see if it's indexed. So this is not really a mistake, but it's something that it can take a significant amount of time to rank for competitive keywords. And if you're expecting to be at the top in the first 3 weeks, that's very unlikely to happen. So I just want to make sure that you understand what's going on with this. No AI citation tracking cadence. You want to make sure that you are looking at what you're ranking for and how often, and then judging the build by month 1 revenue. It's very unlikely that you would have generated anything new in month 1, because you probably don't even have all your content indexed yet. So it's going to take a significant amount of time to get your content indexed, shown up, and starting to generate the sessions and the RFQs for you. That's it. If you own a metal fabrication company and want help with the strategy instead of doing it yourself, I have a link. You can book a call. We could talk next step strategy and see how I can help you out with this. If you want to do it yourself, you have the entire roadmap now. You can build the entire strategy for your website, optimize it, and hopefully you start ranking for more keywords, more important keywords, more valuable keywords, and generating more traffic and more business for your business. Hope you got some value from this one. Talk to you soon.